No problem.
Doing, Ari?
Good. How are you?
Living if you're already there. It's not worth saying if it's already said. Even if it all goes over your head. Believe it if you want to. So keep your eyes on the road and your head in the stars. Find a way down the rabbit hole just a little while longer. You can change anything if you want to. Sing it like ooh, if you want to. Sing it like ooh, if you want to.
Testing.
All right, everybody, here's our next exciting panel. You guys ready?
Yes.
We're going to start this panel. This panel is called Events and Tournaments. And these are things that are often confused, esports events and esports and competitive esports. Very different concepts that are often confused. What are the differences? How can casinos monetize these concepts, and what are the regulatory concerns? Today's discussion will include an evaluation of the industry, what the regulatory landscape looks like, and how innovation, such as the metaverse, will shape the future. A lot of people have heard about the metaverse, Ari.
Yes.
Nobody knows what it is. Do you know what it is?
Of course.
Do you have? Okay, well, I'm going to ask
Of course.
you. I'm going to ask you what it is.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get to.
Eric Weiss was supposed to host this panel, and Eric is very sick right now. I don't think he's faking it. I think he really is very sick when I spoke to him yesterday. And one of the questions he had was, what is the difference between esports events and competitive esports wagering? So he wrote these notes. I'm going to read these notes because Eric is very good at this kind of stuff. Every year there is a discussion about how to reach a younger demographic with the casino industry. That is usually the lead-in for why it's so important to bring esports to the casinos. They tried other things, and they can't seem to lower the age. So far, most of the discussion about esports has been about how to use it promoting a betting market, how to create a betting market around esports, something akin to wagering on the NFL. But esports as a category is so much more. So is the discussion of how to reach a younger demographic. Things like competitive video gaming, immersive experiences, and, there's a word again, the metaverse, are examples of technology that is rapidly evolving in and can be used to attract and retain casino customers. We touched on this a little bit in the last panel about the future of Atlantic City. Certainly, if esports and related technologies are going to thrive in a jurisdiction like New Jersey, we have to position ourselves to be a leader in the esports industry in many different ways. We will talk about why today. We have an impressive panel, and actually one of the things that I'm most excited about is that we have a panel of the two people that really have the most experience in Atlantic City with esports, which is Ben and Ari Fox.
Thank you.
You guys, we should talk about some of your experiences with esports in Atlantic City and the history of it. And we also have Louis Alfieri, Principal Chief Creative Officer of Raven Sun Creative. And I was talking to Louis before, and he's got some very exciting projects that he's working on. Just his mindset is the right choice for what I think Atlantic City needs. So I'd like you to all get started. Let's start with Louis. Can you give us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Hi there. Welcome. Thanks for everybody for having me here today. Thanks to Ari and Ben for putting the event on, Stockton University for hosting us. So I own Ravensun Creative, which is an experiential design and consulting agency working all over the world. We work in all over Southeast Asia, China, Macau, Hong Kong, Korea, Middle East, doing large-scale mixed-use developments for entertainment destinations. We work on different gaming elements. We're working currently with Carnival Cruise Lines and others on incorporation of technology that creates experiences for guests in a range of different capacities and kind of building a complete mixed-use ecosystem, which we're going to talk a bit more about here momentarily.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. What you do is exciting because it is the future of entertainment and location-based entertainment.
And virtual entertainment. I think that's a conversation that we're going to have here.
The
We're
metaverse.
talking about, yes, how we blend the physical and the digital together and where that really is going to take all of us in the future.
So you think there is a blending? It isn't just going to be you're on location or you're at home.
I believe it's absolutely inevitable that what's coming is a blending of the physical and the digital. The metaverse has kind of taken a beating in the last week. Everybody's on the bandwagon to kind of beat on Zuckerberg. But the truth is that what's really coming, we think about the advent of the internet, we think about the arrival of the smartphone, that this arrival of the blending of physical and digital worlds is an inevitable change that's going to influence everyone on that same magnitude and level. What we haven't seen as of yet in this metaverse, which is kind of a bullshit term because everybody's talking like they're an expert in it. And the truth is you wake up stupid every day. It's evolving very quickly. It's changing overnight, the technology that's happening at a global scale. What doesn't exist yet in this space is no one, whether it's Zuckerberg or any of these other groups, has not delivered an ecosystem that works. They haven't delivered value to the consumer. They haven't delivered functionality. They haven't delivered a utility. They haven't delivered interoperability with these systems. So that's why nothing's working. People are going and kind of curious to see what it is and leaving. So when you think about it, there's a lot of talk like Zuckerberg's only got 30,000 active users. Or whatever.
Yeah.
But in truth, if you look at Nike, they have 7 million active users that are participating with the space they've developed. And what it is, and again, I think part of the conversation to the session before, everybody keeps looking at kind of back at what Atlantic City was. I would say look at Nike as the ultimate model. I mean, they're the guys as a manufacturer that don't see themselves as a manufacturer. They market themselves as an aspirational platform for you to be the best version of yourself. And that's the way they've entered the metaverse. They're not selling shirts and shoes in the metaverse. They're selling a platform for community engagement in the metaverse that's tying in with their brand and what people want to be. Young people want to be a part of a community. They want to be what's cool. They want to be a part of the next thing. They're not selling t-shirts in that space. So many people have this sense of the metaverse is, I'm just going to build my casino there and people are going to walk around it. But that's not going to work. You know, it's got to be about what your brand is, what your extension is, what kind of community you're using. And people like Disney who are about to enter the space, they have an IP relationship, a relationship with their guests, a way to create an economic system and a community in that with built-in populations of people that are passionate. That's where we're going to see this take off and be really successful. And the casino community, the gaming community, and the entire Atlantic City community has an ability to lead that. If they kind of think about how to project their brand beyond thinking about what our old model was, about what we can be and lead that space in a really compelling way.
I like how you think about things, because one of the things you said that was exciting is don't think about what happened, think about what's going to happen, which is how I tend to do my business as well, right? So I think for a discussion of the metaverse, it'll be interesting to sort of define some stuff, right? So in Ready Player One is probably the best example of out there of the metaverse, an idea where you can go into some virtual reality world and everything else is kind of superimposed and it's real and you're wearing these goggles. Facebook, formerly known as Facebook, Meta, changed their company structure to create the metaverse as a business. And one of the things that Louis mentioned was, yeah, they have very few users, and generally in all the projects they've tried out, they stay for about 30 days before they don't want to come back, right? So the idea that something that you put on your eyes is going to replace the real world has been discussed for 30, 40 years. But in practical testing, nobody really wants to do it for long term. From a physical point of view, it creates a lot of problems. Like if you have a VR center, people have to touch it and people have oil on their skin and you have to clean all that stuff out and it's just messy and people steal equipment. It's just not a really good idea to bring someone into a physical room and put on a headset. It kind of belies the whole experience. Apple is taking a very expensive deep dive into something called augmented reality, right? So Apple is saying, we're not going to cover everything. We're going to cover some things, or you're going to see the real world, but we're going to add information to it. So when I look at Bill Penders, I'll see an icon that has Bill's, information, and I could maybe look at the icon and send Bill a text without even moving my hands. If I could, watching a sporting event, or talking about wagering, you might be able to take a look at, a player and see their stats and make a determination of whether that guy's going to do this or this in the next 5 seconds, right? So it's the idea of extending, augmenting the reality as opposed to completely replacing it. And then in the middle are these new experiential experiences, which are, you don't have any gear on at all, but the room itself comes alive, sort of like the holodeck in Star Trek, where you have the ability to be in a completely surrounded, it's IMAX 360 in a way, right? But we were talking earlier that when you have a room with technology in it, you can look at it as a gaming console. Now you can say, I want to put the football program on, or the soccer program on, or you're in space, or whatever it is. So when you define these terms, you start to kind of look at their advances. I mean, their positives and their negatives. I personally believe that augmented reality is the way to go. One of which is because augmenting reality is easier than asking someone to completely drop out of reality. Right? And one of the things that augmented reality can do, it isn't just putting up data, but it's putting up, chat streams and things that you may not think are something people want to see. But just imagine getting rid of this and having everything that is on the phone. Now I can see it, but you can't. It's kind of a cool idea. But if talk about distraction, we're already distracted enough anyway. So now that I went on that little rant, I'm going to introduce Ben and Ari. Ben and Ari have been in Atlantic City for far longer than any other esports organization or gaming organization. So Ben and Ari, can you guys talk about your efforts here and what you do?
Yeah, so we,
And of course, Ari Job's in front of me.
yeah, so
This is why you'll notice that he does most of the talking.
Yeah. So we started a GameCon event where we talk about events and tournaments. GameCon event that had tournaments in it. You can't have you can't have a video gaming conference or a video gaming event without a tournament, and vice versa. In our opinion, you can't have a tournament without the event. We believe that there has to be a cultural connection to gamers. So there's 3 billion gamers worldwide. As GameCon was created in 2014, as our parent company that actually also runs the Casino Esports Conference as an educational platform for the gambling industry, we realized that there has to be a festival around it. It's the way to open the door to invite the innovation. It's in the way to open the door to connect with those that not only play the games, but also make the games. And GameCon actually does stand for Game Arts Conference. That's the whole purpose of A in the middle of the name of GameCon. And what you touched on before was you talked about, all of this innovation, and Louis, you talked about the future, not looking at the past. Unfortunately, for the Casino Esports Conference as a whole, we're really trying to help the casino industry, the gambling industry, come to an understanding of everything that we encompass, which I like to call techtainment, or technical or technological entertainment. And most of the executives, and I saw 1 or 2 executives here from the casino industry, have embraced this here in Atlantic City. We get a lot in Las Vegas. But the thing about it is that, you can talk to, I was at G2E last week, and you'll talk to any executive and they'll say, oh, you know what, they're a demographic group, they're playing video games, yes, but as they age out to be, the 55 and pluses, they're gonna go play slot machines.
I can't believe something, I know they said that, but I
Right.
cannot believe they said that.
So, right, I'm 55, I still play video games, okay?
Because you're a child mental.
That's exactly, because I'm still a child. But my point being is, I don't like slots. Never have, never will. And there are younger people than I that never have, never will in the same regard. And it's amazing to me that they feel that the entertainment offering that the gambling industry is offering today is the same entertainment offering that they feel will be in the future. And if they stay that way, they're gonna find that their buildings are gonna become more and more and more empty.
It's not exclusive to the casino industry. We face the same thing in the experiential entertainment location-based environment. I was just speaking recently at SATE and South by Southwest about that particular topic. There is a sensibility that when that industry sees itself as a $35 or $40 billion industry, and it looks up to the film industry, which is a $45 to $50 billion industry. But what's interesting is when you look at the gaming industry and you combine that with mobile gaming, so we're talking about console, we're talking about mobile, which is a much larger platform, is a $875 billion total industry cumulatively. And they're talking about that in the next 5 to 10 years reaching $1 trillion valuation. And that in that context, that's really where young people are engaged. 50% of women are participating in this gaming environment. The demographics are radically different. And there is a significant business opportunity that many people are overlooking. I mean, just when you look at the numbers, it should be getting a lot of the people's attention. And they're kind of set in their way, that we're kind of repeating what we've done, where this is what we know and this is what's worked, so don't change it. But there's a phenomenal amount of money being left at the table that others, new brands, new voices, new business models are going to capitalize and kind of leapfrog some of these
Well,
products.
you talked about the virtual world, you talked about, the bullshit term metaverse, as we all mentioned. But my point of being is that we're going already there, okay? Look at some of the casinos and what they do on social media. I would say 90% of them are not using TikTok. 90% of them are not on Discord. They're not reaching a younger audience and they're not even trying. So with the world already being ahead of them, and then not even connecting and being on that level of like the current social media platforms that are already extremely popular with gamers and people of a younger demographic, they're already lost.
Well, I would even add, it's not even the platforms, it's even just areas of the world. When we look at the Chinese consumer, their digital adoption rate is so much more advanced than we have in North America. The casino industry could simply go and emulate what's happening in mainland China and in Macau, mainland China now, and already be seen as an innovator, just duplicating what already exists in that ecosystem, because it's so much more advanced than what we're dealing with locally.
Well, what are some examples of it?
Well, and they use something, for example, WeChat is a super platform.
Yeah.
So WeChat, you pay for everything, you integrate, you do all your business through it, all your socialization. Instead of having a suite of apps, everything is exclusive to that. And your complete user experience, online, offline, everything that you're doing is through this. And from a data extraction standpoint, is remarkable kind of the relationship and the profile you can develop of a user or a guest to cater to that community that you're building. So you can
They
kind
call
of-
this super apps, right? Is that the
Yes,
name? Yes.
correct. So, I mean, that alone is one huge opportunity in and of its right. But also when you think about how they're engaging with development, with loyalty programs, with online purchasing, is so much further ahead than what we're doing. It's remarkable just to copy what they're doing and implement that here would give someone an immediate technical advantage in this market.
The closest we have to a super app here is probably Amazon. Right? I mean, it's not even that close, but it's,
Or Google. I mean,
Yeah, Google,
sort
but-
of has a suite of.
it's not as
programs.
integrated as like because the super apps are one app entrance, which makes it easier. You get one money in, one money out, games, yeah.
That's actually a very good segue into the casinos here in Atlantic City as opposed to Las Vegas, because that was brought up in the earlier talk, and I just want to like touch on that for a second. The answer is really not even for the let's forget about all these gamers and people that want to play video games. The actual business construct, all it is going to take is everybody just sort of putting their nose to the grindstone and just backing what this is as a whole, and that's happening here. So, I see this as a very historic event for me. I already brought it up because we're going to eat at the Fork and Knife afterwards.
Very
That
good
is,
restaurant.
right, and that's deep history here. But this is history in the making, because in order to bring a group of people together to move as one voice into this industry, even being a little afraid and not understanding it, is what it takes. Because when Las Vegas when they decide to do a citywide campaign, they all work at it.
Mhm.
And they accomplish it every single time, because their infrastructure is all about bringing those people to the desert, right? So, yeah, Atlantic City kind of has the same opportunity, and I've seen it before. I mean, they did do a city, and when they did that, it made noise. It worked, and it was a result because Pennsylvania was taking away a lot of business, and Connecticut was taking business. And people were going to Vegas, so they were like, "Oh my God, we have to do something." Okay, we're sort of at that crossroads again, and this time, it's an entire population of gamers or players that can't relate to anything that's going on in those properties right now.
I think that last part, I said earlier that there's a generation of human beings that are growing up that are so different than the people in this room, maybe not you're younger. But
we're the
we don't
last,
really understand how different, they're so different from us that
We just have to go with it,
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
that's what you need to do.
well, we're the last generation that bridges the analog and digital
Yeah.
world. My daughter is a digital native. Children younger than her are completely digital native. It's a remarkable different sense of how they wish to communicate, how they wish to participate and engage in the world. It's not that they're alien or anything. They've just been brought up in a world that everything like this has been available to them from birth. They have an expectation of what that experience and user function should be. And they demand that. We're not really demanding that. It's not part of our fabric as beings. One thing I think this brings up, and it's an important definition that has to be understood locality-wise or industry-wise, is the concept of innovation. Okay, so the conversation earlier I was listening to, in my industry, I come from the experiential space working with entertainment all over the world. What do you mean by innovation? I sit with a lot of owners. I go and I sit with the leaders of Saudi Arabia or these giant developers in China. And a lot of people, there's a lot of pride measuring, I'll say it nicely for this group. There's a lot of I want everything to have EST, the biggest, the longest, the fastest, because they want to, it's new money. I want something new that's never been done before. The minute you actually put something on the table that breaks every business model, every function, the immediate answer is no, I don't really want that.
Mhm.
I want what worked already plus one new thing. I want Tide plus one. And I think when you talked about what did Vegas do that transcended them, they looked at kind of delivering at one point an adult playground. Then they were an entertainment destination. Then they were a family destination. Now they're looking at becoming a technology mixed use ecosystem hub. There's a sense of constant reinvention and kind of taking risks on things that are not standardized. Now, it may be slower than we'd like or different than other industries. But I think what exists here in Atlantic City is an opportunity is kind of to grab onto this particular subject, this esports phenomenon, this tech ecosystem that's there, and plant a flag on it, lead it, charge with it, but have the vision to kind of go further than what exists and kind of iterate very rapidly, test and adjust of new things that could lead the industry and spearhead others to want to duplicate and follow, which is important. You don't want to follow anybody else. This community needs to lead in that way and have others emulate that.
What's interesting about that is that it's one of the few things, I talk a little bit about my career. I did the first computer-generated television show. I did the first VOD channel in the United States with Comcast. I did the first free-to-play brought on by Nexon. right? And now we're doing the first, video game, real money video game wagering app and Esports Illustrated. Those are huge risks that have cost me dearly with my family, You have ups and downs, but the risk takers are a certain breed of person. And I think one of the experiences that I can share here without mentioning any names, we actually worked with a casino leader who's no longer in the city, so I can talk vaguely about it. We said, we're gonna do this program, and the first group that nails bringing gamers into a venue is going to make $1 trillion. And it's not if, it's when. Someone's gonna figure it out. So we worked out this program, and this is how it's gonna happen. And the day that we were getting approval, one of the things you said was brought up. We had been working with this person for 6 months. Well, we're just gonna wait until somebody else does it. It's like, well, then you're not innovating anymore. But that mentality cannot be replicated by people who run $1 million properties or multiple $1 million properties. It has to be brought in from the outside.
But what happens is you're gonna get these, you get the, sort of the older crowds that are running these casinos. Like, there was an article that came out in the CDC reports, which is a gambling publication. And in that article, it was right after the pandemic, or it was actually during the pandemic, the pandemic was ending. And they saw an uptick of young people playing slot machines in Las Vegas. Ooh, you see, they're not going to play video games. They're playing slot machines. If you lock anyone up for a long enough time, they're going to go do whatever they can do without, without regard of what they're doing. But
And I think we're not saying no millennials are playing slot machines. We're saying the same. I think it's been 50% less every generation down.
correct. But my point is that they'll hang on that. And they'll say, oh, there's no reason to go to esports because they're going to start playing slot machines and stuff like that. And like you said, we're not saying to get rid of the slot machines. We're not saying to get rid of what is currently on a casino floor at the moment. What we are saying is look at situations, and I can tell you that we knew Gameco that did some stuff here in Atlantic City. But the guy who was running Gameco, he actually had to market it himself. I remember being in town one time and seeing his ads on the tops of taxis.
Yourself.
Right. So he had to market himself when this was something that was part of the casino floor. And then the casino did some creative things. They made them separate from the actual floor itself, or they put it in a place that nobody could find it. But that game itself, and the games that were created, were very much skewed to a chance-based program. And gamers would go up to that game and say, hey, you know what? It's not skill. It's not based on my skill.
It's nothing I'm familiar with.
Listen, we walked by last night, you and I, the rooms that they had dedicated or tried to do some of these skill-based games at Tropicana.
Chance-based. It was skill chance-based.
Right, and they're not there now. And that's because gamers won't play them.
Well, those games were skewed and were created to appease the casino executives, not to cater to the gamer, the customers.
I think that's key. And that also speaks to why I think Zuckerberg is failing. He's trying to shape the market as opposed to fill a space and need within the consumer and the market. And to that end, when we talked to Jordan, his intent in terms of application, how he wants to engage this ecosystem. I'm on the board of advisors with Jordan for the Amateur Esports Union, so I get to talk to him about this stuff more often than most folks. But the sensibility, when you talk to how gamers participate, they are community-based. They want to bet on each other. They want to compete with each other. They want to bet on themselves in activities. It's a different sensibility about how they wish to participate. It's not that they don't want to bet, that they're thirsty to. They want to participate, but their modes of engagement are different. And you have to listen to what the market user is wanting to dictate in their behavioral attribute to be able to create a business model around that works and to create compelling experiences that cater to their form of participation to engage in that.
Louis, but I've been on a panel where I've sat on a panel of people who have put money into the esports ecosystem as wagering, and there's on that panel, I was in Toronto, and in that panel, the people that, I'm not going to say who it was, the people that were on the panel were saying, we've tried everything, we've put money into esports. And I turned on that panel because I was sitting on it, and I said, but you don't understand your customer.
Correct.
Well, the other problem is esports is like 10 games, in everybody's definition when it should be all games.
Right.
Right? So,
Exactly,
Anthony,
yeah.
you'll find this interesting. I think you'll find.
Right,
this
because currently they may pick apart which game is which, but in reality, you're dealing with, and I quoted this on my LinkedIn, I came up with this, I said, it's the game or not the game, okay? So that's really, yeah, that's really who you have to appeal to, because the game will change, and a gamer will play one game, and then 3 years later, start getting involved in another one, in another community. But they still bridge the gap. They have feelings for their original games. They all do, if you speak to them. I mean, if somebody starts from the Nintendo generation, I like to call them, they're stuck. They can tell you about every single game that Nintendo came out with, how it plays, that they played it, but now they're playing Fortnite. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, just last night I was talking to Alman, and he's saying, was it you, or I think we were talking about how you knew of someone who was playing CSGO and they switched to Valorant or something like that. But I mean, this is what it is. I mean, these guys aren't going to stick to one game. I mean, they'll play multiple games. And it's the game or not the game, for sure.
Well, and I think it's part of their celebrity, part of their opportunity in terms of how that's different than what we're accustomed to. We are accustomed to one person, one sport for the duration of their career. I mean, maybe Bo Jackson or somebody's been able to kind of bridge that. But what you have in the gamer community is the ability to they may excel at one particular game, and even on one platform. There are a lot of micro communities, so you may be known on Twitch, but not on Discord. How that changes kind of the ability to monetize a relationship with that person, who they're drawing in from an influence perspective, is very different than what the kind of traditional model is.
I want to get back to the metaverse for 1 second.
Yeah, I love the metaverse.
Okay, so people who have heard or don't know what it is, or at this point right now, it's pretty much 2D, right? The metaverse. I mean, if you go in and wander around in certain companies, they call the metaverses their own virtual world. It's really not where it needs to be, which is VR. VR is really going to make that experience an alternate reality. Currently, right now, these people are building websites, calling them metaverses, but really what they are 2D shopping malls, or a way in which to connect, which most of them aren't being promoted. If Facebook is successful at being able to get people into it or using it, which most of their demographic is not even interested at this point.
Right. Their existing body of users.
Exactly. So Zuckerberg in this attempt is trying to draw in the younger users, obviously, but he's doing it in a way, like Lewis had said, that it's not effective, because they would be looking to enter in a VR environment if they were doing it. They're not looking, I mean, anybody can go on a website and search what kind of sneakers they want, or they can connect through Discord to talk to their friends or anything else like that. That's what they're doing. The metaverse will be something once it looks like Upload or Ready Player One or these other things. At this point right now, you're right. He's just kind of appealing throughout this buzzword. People don't know what it is 100%. So it might as well be an NFT or Bitcoin or something else you don't know what it is. So give me your money and invest that, and maybe it'll be something. So the reality is at this point in time, the metaverse its true form is going to be the Ready Player One, and that's when people will start engaging in it. And even then, it's going to be difficult, because you're going to have many, many companies that are going to have to work together as opposed to having their own. I mean, the casinos that are building their own are thinking that people will just come to that. I've said a long time ago, even with the arenas, my philosophy, their philosophy is in reverse. It's customary to, the Field of Dreams concept. You build it, they will come. Well, gamers don't function like that. And it's actually even easier to get them to come, because it's all community-based. So you work with something on the community level first, you get them involved, and then you grow it from that point. You can't go backwards. It's a reverse model than what we're used to.
Well, I think the thing you touched on, the reason why it hasn't happened yet is because a lot of the metaverse projects now are basically just 3D extensions of 2D websites. There's no experience there.
Right.
Right. And, one of the things I was going to say to Anthony was when we were looking at advancing Atlantic City products and slot machines, one of the things the slot machine manufacturers had contracted us for about 11 years ago was how do we reduce churn, right? We got 55 games that have cats in them. So if someone likes cats, another competitor will create a cats game and 2 competitors, and then we can't keep our cat customers. So we said, look, these are gamers. They want long-term goals, right? They want the ability to take an alley cat and make it into a fancy cat. And those things, yeah, that purrs and has a little jewel, right? So how do you get those things? And they want the ability to come back and that cat's, where were you, mommy? Because I wasn't, you've been away for a while, so it entices people to come back, and maybe the cat sends you a text, hey, I'm hungry, come back to the casino. But, and those things don't involve regulations, right? They're just, the gambling game is still the same game, but the experience is totally different. And one of the things that the metaverse or whatever these experiential things are going to be is it isn't just virtual reality, it isn't just augmented reality. If I think the metaverse is anything, it's connected everything.
Correct. Now, I would add,
Right.
that's the question, that's the point of, that's where this blending takes place. It's not
Yes.
creating a 2D virtual world. It's the interoperability of the seamless 2D and 3D world together functioning. And that interoperability using the blockchain is your ability to take an object that you have manifested, created, or bought in one of these spaces and take it with you throughout your life that it's attributed to you. And it may take different behavioral attributes in each place you go. But like we do, we migrate through the internet freely right now. This is a point to Ben's comment. There's a big issue about where this all heads because they're all trying to segregate and build their own world. Disney wants to build their own world. Zuckerberg is doing this because he wants to get rid of Apple. He wants to create his own hardware and software ecosystem so he can interpret the data. And in truth, a bigger issue with this, and all of you here as regulators really need to start thinking about this. The metaverse and the behavioral attributes that it's meant to capture through facial tracking, emotion tracking, movement tracking, your dwell time and purchases and applications. The function in many ways is to create a digital duplicate of you to test you on purchasing things and use your behavioral attributes, your emotional attributes, and your own self to create a digital double that you can then, they can predictively analyze and use predictive analytics to outthink you about what to buy on your own behavioral patterns. And these kind of digital double rights like you guys here in government need to start thinking about how are you going to protect somebody's identity that's been scanned and put into this digital world that crosses all borders. How do we deal from, I'm way off on here on what we were talking about, the legality of all of that and what is crime in that space?
Yeah, and Apple took it to them already the first time. Apple said, no, this user tracking that you're doing without permission, we're going to shut it down. And I forget how much money it cost Facebook or Meta, but it was in the many billions of dollars that caused their stock to go down 60%. Right? So now they're going to try to go into it a different way, using biometric data. They're very clever, those people at Facebook. You're going to say something?
I was just going to say that when everything is digitized, just back to that, and so that the regulators don't freak out. But most things in the computer world, or the video gaming world, we call it, or the esports world, everything is calculated in every second, in milliseconds. Cheating is something that the game developers, even when they create it, they're creating it in such a way that you have to traverse a certain path, and if you go off that path in the game, it throws up a whole bunch of red flags. So it's not somebody overseeing it. This is like now they're at the point where AI is getting involved and catching a lot. The anti-theft, bottom line is anti-theft in video gaming and in also esports surpasses anything that exists right now in a casino environment. They're using typewriters, okay? And these guys are like on starships.
Yeah,
So it's like,
I don't leave you the final question. We spoke with the assembly about the next generation of biometrics for wagering. And one of the things that we sometimes run into opposition, like we don't need all that much. It's like, well, no, these gamers can go bypass any system you set up. I mean, when the company that I owned in Korea, we used to hire hackers to hack ourselves because that was the best way for us to figure out what the weaknesses were.
Technology could be a fun thing, that's why I call it techtainment, but it also could be for governmental rules, very scary, especially for trying to protect their consumers.
It moves fast. Lois, I was wondering if you could answer.
But it is built in, so, you know, it is built in.
If you could answer one thing for us, because you seem to know quite a bit about this. Can you tell all of us here, who the next generation of people are? What is the Gen Zennials? What sets them differently than Generation X and maybe even millennials?
It's a very multifaceted answer. I would say a couple of key things that you should think about and develop strategy for. One, they don't trust brands. They only trust each other. There is no faith in what they're being told because the world around them is kind of an untruth, and it's extending. You know, soon deep fakes. You won't even be able to believe what you see before your eyes. So the truth network, the people you trust are those around you that you formed a relationship with. That's a significant issue about the social contract. It does not exist for these young people. The connection to what we understand as community or we see as country or nationality has a very different sensibility of what that relationship is. You know, we who grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s have a sense of what we think the national identity is. We have a sense of what we think a community structure is, what our social contract as individuals are. They have a radically different perception of what that is because they've been let down by what they see that is. I would say that and I'm really going off on a transcendental concept here.
Please do.
Their sense of hope is very different. The world, they are permeated in a world of negativism. All the headlines that they see. Our entire business model as a society has been kind of doomsaying about everything.
They're almost like survivors in a way.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're experiencing a trauma of growing up that's closer to kind of the World War II generation than what any of us has experienced. So their sensibility of how to structure, how to advance as individuals is different. And we need to go back and in some ways look at previous population sets about who've gone through those kind of scenarios to understand how does that change their behavioral pattern as people, their relationship pattern, their purchasing patterns. When we think about how people came out of the Great Depression, that they scrapped and they held everything and they didn't spend money. And like the people who came out of the 60s have been pissing money away left and right. We're going to see a very different sensibility about how they see value structure and what they're doing. Their sense of community engagement with each other is dramatically different.
To see people fighting, to see the arguments, to see the riots, to see the wars, and their mental psyche is like, how do I stabilize myself?
Well,
So
they have
live
a
in this
different kind of
world.
revolt. They withdraw, okay? So
That won't last though. I think that's going to change.
I know, but most people see them as introverted or within their phone or within their computer. But the reality is what they're doing on that phone, what they're doing on that computer is talking to their community.
Yeah.
And they're building a backstory. So they are very powerful. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do, but they don't do it the same way we did.
Correct.
They don't march on Washington. They don't burn bras. Okay.
They raise money for causes bigger than we did.
All right, but they also, their revolt is different. If they don't like a politician, for example, they might buy out their entire arena online just to piss them off. But that's how they operate. And so the key point in that factor is if you become part of that community and you become genuinely and real, they will not only accept you, but they'll actually help promote you.
Exactly.
So that's really
And I would add
Exactly.
one-
It's one thing to hire an influencer for your property, to pay them something to promote your property as a casino. It's another thing that the influencer is in love with your property, or your property is part of that community, part of what resonates with those people. And there's a massive disconnect because that is one of the solid things that they need to understand, not just in the casino industry, but across many different industries that they're missing that.
And I would add one other point that I think it's affecting all of us as humanity. They're very cognizant of kind of the natural world around them is dying. And this reaction to being in a virtual space, engaging virtually, in some ways is prescient about kind of the world they believe they're going to exist in the future.
Yeah, I'm going to close it on that. I can talk about this forever. This is a very interesting topic. So Thank you, everyone, for being here, Louis.
Thank you, guys.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thank you. So we have one more, kind of, is it 5-minute break?
5-minute break, and then we'll come back.
There's still plenty of food if you guys want to drink.
I haven't talked to you forever, man. That's fantastic stuff. Yeah, I think, I do agree that this generation,
Let's hope.
they're better than us. And the idea of survivors, I didn't think of that until you said it. They're like surviving all this shit going on, you know?
They're gonna make a change.
They're very aggressive. That's the one thing. Is that they don't talk about things. They just do it. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. Thank you for coming.
Likewise, man, thank you for having
Yeah, so players union.
Yeah, Jordan is the leader of the amateur.
So Jordan, we're launching esports plus.
Louis, nice to meet you.
Which is I don't know how familiar
I
you are
don't,
with
I'm
esports
brand
plus.
new with my company,
So
as well I'm with Rutgers.
Okay.
So we've got an esports management certificate program we're just launching, part of the continuing ed
Oh,
team at our school business.
Oh, thank you. I work with Cornell and Brevada in the Netherlands and a lot of universities. So I mentor and talk to students. So if I can help in any way, I'd be happy to.
Absolutely, I'm sure we'll be in touch, but yeah, like I said, we do professional executive education, so
Very
it's
cool.
continuing ed, it's helping, you know, we have a, like I said, a certificate program, so folks who want to pivot into the industry, giving them a badge and a resume builder for them, but also simultaneously having a training program for some of these older companies to say, hey, your folks